I never imagined silence could carry such weight, yet the instant I stepped inside, the quiet struck me like a thunderclap. The house felt gutted, void of everything that once gave it life. There was no trace of Lorna's favorite lavender scent drifting through the air, no low murmur of the radio she always left on as background noise, and no casual clutter of shoes by the door. It was just a vacant, soulless space. I stood frozen, fingers wrapped tightly around my keys, struggling to steady my breath. I had known this day would arrive, but that didn't cushion the blow. It didn't ease the pressure in my chest. I moved slowly from room to room, trying to absorb what remained. The couch was gone. The photos that once filled the walls had been torn down, leaving only bare hooks where memories used to hang. Even the kitchen carried a sense of abandonment, drawers left ajar, a single mug sitting lonely on the counter, like she'd taken one last sip and walked out for good. My breath caught as I exhaled, my hand reaching for my phone. The last message she had sent stared back at me. It was just a mistake. You're overreacting. A mistake, her word for it. But that wasn't the truth. It hadn't been some accident or misunderstanding. It had been a deliberate choice, a decision to discard everything we had created together and let someone else into the space that was meant to belong to us alone. I lowered my phone and rubbed my face, trying to stop the memory from playing again, but it came anyway, the same way it always did. That night felt burned into my mind. I'd stayed late at the office, determined to finish a project before the weekend. Earlier that day, Lorna had mentioned going out with friends. That didn't raise any red flags. She had her own life, and I never doubted her. Still, something about that evening had felt off. Her recent behavior had changed, she'd become distant, less open. Our conversations had grown shorter, often ending with a dismissive smile. You're just overthinking, she'd tell me. I almost ignored the gnawing feeling in my gut that night. Almost. But something inside pushed me to do otherwise. On my drive home, I changed course and passed by the bar she claimed she'd be at. That's where I saw her, not surrounded by girlfriends, not casually chatting. She was in the arms of another man. Laughing, leaning into him like I'd never been part of her world. Like our shared life had been nothing but a placeholder until someone more exciting showed up. The moment I saw her hand rest on his chest and watched him pull her in without hesitation, something inside me broke. I didn't go inside. I didn't confront her. I just drove home. Then I started packing. Now, standing here in the ruins of what once was my life, I didn't feel rage. I didn't even feel heartbreak. I felt drained, completely worn down. She would return soon, unaware of what was waiting. There wouldn't be an argument. No dramatic confrontation. Just an empty house and a truth she couldn't erase. I sat in the silence, my eyes tracing the blank walls, trying to make sense of how things had unraveled. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. It had become a shell, stripped of its soul. The warmth was gone. The memories had faded into shadows. Nothing remained but faint echoes of a life that had ended. I had never believed that marriage was flawless, but I had believed in ours. I thought the bond we had formed over the years, through job changes, tight budgets, sleepless nights chasing dreams, had created something unbreakable. I truly believed we would always choose each other. That loyalty would prevail no matter how tempting the world outside became. That the life we had painstakingly built was worth more than a fleeting thrill with someone else. But with a single night, Lorna destroyed that belief. Looking back, the warning signs had been everywhere these past few weeks. I had just refused to see them. I had put too much faith in the woman I had loved for over 10 years. I couldn't accept that she could betray me so easily. The image of her at that bar refused to fade. She was so at ease, laughing in the arms of someone else, so unbothered by the pain she was causing. And then came her message after I confronted her. It was just a mistake. You're overreacting. That word again, overreacting. How many people had used it to cover up the hurt they'd inflicted? As if betrayal could be dismissed as a misunderstanding. As though an apology could undo the years I had poured into our relationship. As if simply saying I didn't mean to could make it all disappear. But what hurt more than the act itself was the way she responded. There was no real sorrow in her. No tears. No urgency to make things right. When I brought it up, she didn't seem surprised or sorry. She acted like I was the problem. Like my pain was an inconvenience. I had expected heartbreak in her eyes, maybe even a plea to fix things. Instead, she rolled her eyes and let out a sigh. It didn't mean anything, Orson. You're blowing this out of proportion. She brushed me off so effortlessly, like I was merely a minor inconvenience interrupting her good time. That was the moment everything became clear. There was nothing left worth salvaging. So I made my decision. While she was out, I began packing. But I didn't stop at just a suitcase or two. I cleared out my drawers, emptied the closet of my clothes, and carefully chose the few items that still held meaning for me. My grandfather's old watch, a few cherished books, my camera. Everything else? I left it all behind. The house, the furniture, the dishes, even the decorations we had once excitedly picked out together. None of it meant anything to me anymore. She could have it all. I went to the safe and pulled out the essentials, my birth certificate, passport, car title. I transferred my money into a new bank account, one she had no access to. I called the landlord and let him know I wouldn't be renewing the lease. And then I left a note. Nothing dramatic, nothing sentimental. Just 6 words: you made your choice. Now live with it. By the time I was done, I felt strangely hollow. There was no anger, no sadness. Just a quiet, resolute sense of closure. It felt like I had already mourned the end of our relationship long ago. All that remained was tying up the loose ends. Lorna would be home soon. She'd come through the door expecting things to be normal. She might even call out my name, bracing for an argument or hoping for another chance to explain herself. Instead, she'd find only silence and emptiness. And she would know, without any doubt, that there would be no coming back from this. She arrived about an hour later. I had replayed this moment in my mind countless times, imagining every possible reaction she might have. But nothing could have fully prepared me for the reality. I heard the familiar click of her heels echo down the hall as she entered, followed by the metallic clink of her keys landing in the bowl by the door. Routine, casual. Then came the silence. I knew exactly what she was taking in. The empty space where my jacket used to hang, the missing shoes, the gaps on the bookshelf where my things once stood. She walked further in, and I heard her pause. A sharp breath, hesitation in her steps. She hadn't yet absorbed the full picture. Then her voice broke the stillness. It was uncertain, shaky, followed by more quiet. She walked deeper into the house. I could almost see her flicking on the lights, her eyes scanning the now lonely corner where the couch had sat. The kitchen table remained, but my chair was no longer there. The framed snapshots of our shared life, wedding smiles, vacations, goofy moments, had vanished from the walls. Her breathing turned uneven. Her voice cracked again, thinner this time. Still nothing from me. And then came the moment I had anticipated. I heard her sharp inhale, followed by hurried footsteps as she began moving from room to room. She was checking, looking for confirmation of what she already knew deep down. She'd open drawers and find them bare, slide hangers aside to find nothing hanging. The bathroom shelves cleared of all my belongings. The house still stood, but I had removed myself from it completely. Finally, I heard the soft rustle of paper as she discovered the note I had left on the kitchen counter. You made your choice. Now live with it. A long silence followed. No movement, no sound. Then came the faint exhale. I could imagine her standing there, eyes fixed on those words, reading them again and again, slowly beginning to grasp the weight of what she had done. It wasn't tears I heard next. I hadn't expected them, and they didn't come. What broke the quiet was frustration. A shaky breath, then the sound of her tossing the note aside. A scoff, like she was trying to convince herself this wasn't real. But it was. She reached for her phone. I imagined her opening our messages, scrolling through old conversations, searching for some clue that this had been in the works. Maybe she checked my location, thinking I was somewhere close by, maybe at a bar or with a friend, waiting for her to chase after me. Maybe she believed this was some dramatic bluff. But she wouldn't find anything. I had already blocked her before stepping out that door. From the safety of my car parked at a distance, I watched everything unfold, unseen. I didn't want a confrontation. I wasn't looking for one last fight or hollow apology. I'd heard enough. Heard her claim it had been a simple mistake. Heard her try to justify what she did as if it were some momentary lapse. But mistakes are forgetting to set an alarm or grabbing the wrong item at the store. What she did wasn't a slip-up. It was a deliberate choice, one she made fully aware of the consequences. She paced restlessly in front of the window, her phone pressed to her ear. Maybe she was trying to call me, but I wasn't going to answer. Not now, not ever. I waited, watching as the weight of her actions finally caught up to her. It took a few more minutes before she stopped moving. Her shoulders drooped slightly. The truth had sunk in. I was really gone. And for the first time since she chose to betray what we had, she stood alone in a home that no longer held both of us. I didn't drive off immediately. Some part of me wanted to speed away, to disappear completely and never glance back. A part of me, the part that had spent more than 10 years building a shared life with her, still wanted to witness it unfold. I needed to see the exact second it sank in for her that I was really gone. Sitting in my car, I watched her through the living room window. She was standing still, frozen in place. The phone remained pressed against her ear, and I could imagine the whirlwind of thoughts running through her head. Perhaps she assumed that if she kept calling, I might answer. Maybe she thought I hadn't gone far, just stepping out for air, waiting for her to say something that would undo everything. She had a remarkable ability to believe her own hopeful illusions. From my vantage point, I could see her grip on the phone tighten. Her jaw locked, her lips moved rapidly, though I couldn't make out the words. Was she leaving a message? Whispering accusations? Reassuring herself that I was the one overreacting? It didn't matter. Nothing she could say would rewrite the reality of what she had done. This was entirely on her. Then something inside her snapped. She ripped the phone from her ear and hurled it onto the couch. Her pacing started, an anxious, frantic back and forth as she dragged her fingers through her hair, exhaling in sharp bursts of frustration. I had spent years learning her body language, could distinguish between her angry pacing and when she was spiraling. This was no longer anger. This was fear. It was finally dawning on her. I saw her pick up the note I'd left behind, the one she had brushed off just minutes earlier, and read it again. This time her posture sagged. Her hands clutched the paper tightly, almost as if she thought squeezing it hard enough might somehow reverse what had already happened. But she didn't crumple it or throw it away. She just stood there, transfixed by those 6 words, letting the weight of them settle in. You made your choice. Now live with it. And she would. I could have left then. Honestly, I should have. But I stayed, waiting to see what she would do next. She finally began to move, each step slow and deliberate, like her body was struggling to keep pace with the reality her mind had finally acknowledged. She turned, scanning the room as though noticing its emptiness for the very first time. Her arms trembled at her sides. Then, without warning, she bolted toward the bedroom. Even from the car, I could hear drawers being yanked open, clothes hangers rattling as she searched. She was looking for my belongings, desperately hoping I had only packed a few things and that I might still come back. But she would find nothing. Her search grew increasingly desperate. She checked every corner, closet, bathroom, even the laundry basket. When there was no trace of me left, she simply stopped moving. I watched as she leaned heavily against the dresser, her head bowed low. Now she truly felt it, the void. She had never imagined this outcome. She might have expected fury, maybe even shouting, arguments, demands for answers, some dramatic showdown about what our marriage had become. She had likely anticipated ultimatums, not silence. What she hadn't anticipated was an empty house, a husband who didn't look back. She hadn't expected to be the one left behind. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like the one who had lost. I turned the key in the ignition. She didn't notice. She was too caught up in the mess of her own making, too overwhelmed by the consequences she hadn't seen coming. As I drove away from what had once been my home, a rare sensation settled over me, peace. That first night away, I thought it would feel strange. I braced myself for a sleepless night, for the silence to crush me. But it didn't. I slept more soundly than I had in many months. Maybe it was the stillness, maybe the relief of finally regaining control over my life. Whatever it was, I woke up with a sense of lightness I hadn't felt in ages. I'd found a short-term rental a few towns over. It was modest, a small, furnished apartment with just the basics. But it was mine. No echoes of the past, no lingering ghosts of our shared life. Just space. Space to breathe. Space to begin again. By the time I finally checked my phone, it was no surprise to see it lit up with missed calls and unread messages, all from Lorna. I didn't open a single one. I didn't have to. I could imagine every word. At first, she'd be annoyed, dismissive even. Are you kidding me? You're being ridiculous. Just call me. Then, when it became clear I wasn't responding, her tone would shift. Orson, please. Let's just talk. This isn't the way to fix things. And finally, once she realized I was really gone, desperation would creep in. She didn't know how to handle that. She wasn't used to being the one left behind. I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on moving forward, checking my emails, reviewing my bank accounts, ensuring that all my documents were secure and properly sorted. I had made all the necessary preparations before walking away. I moved my finances, updated every password, spoke with my lawyer. This morning, she would wake up to a new reality, one where she no longer had access to me. Every door had been closed by her own decisions. Now she would have to face them, sit among the very people who knew something had changed. As I placed my phone on the table, my thoughts drifted back to the house we once shared. Did she sleep there last night, completely alone in the space she'd turned into a hollow shell? Had she tried to reach out to her friends only to realize that none of them could truly grasp why I had disappeared without a single explanation? Would she attempt to explain it away, claim it had all been a misunderstanding? Or had she finally come to terms with the fact, perhaps privately, that this was the consequence of her own choices? I got dressed and stepped outside. I had nowhere specific to be, just an urgent need to escape the loop of thoughts circling my mind. I stumbled upon a quiet little coffee shop, the sort of place I had never carved out time for before. It was peaceful, low-key. I ordered a black coffee, found a seat by the window, and allowed the flow of the world to pass me by. There was a strange kind of liberation in the air. Despite walking away from a life I had poured more than 10 years into, I didn't feel lost. I felt something closer to release. Then the phone calls started. But not from Lorna. The first came from someone we both knew, a mutual friend. I let it ring out. Then another came through. And another after that. My brow furrowed as a quiet alarm settled in my chest. Something was definitely going on. When the fourth call hit, curiosity got the better of me. I played the latest voicemail. Orson, listen. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but Lorna's been posting nonstop on social media. She's making it sound like you just walked out on her out of nowhere. She's telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown and left her blindsided. Man, you need to clear this up. I exhaled slowly, frustration mingling with a sense of inevitability. Of course she wouldn't take responsibility. Of course she wouldn't own the truth. Lorna had always had a knack for reshaping the story, always managing to paint herself as the innocent party. I could already imagine the tone of the post's vague yet emotional captions alluding to betrayal, heartbreak, complete with a somber photo of her looking devastated. Her comments section would be flooded with concern and sympathy from people who knew nothing about what had truly happened. She wasn't weeping because I had walked out of her life. She was upset because she no longer had control of the story. I took a long sip from my coffee, the sharp taste anchoring me. There was a time not long ago when I would have scrambled to defend myself, to make sure every lie was countered with the truth. But now? I had no energy for it. Let her twist the facts. Let her post. Because, eventually, the truth always had a way of surfacing. I didn't bother checking her social media. I didn't need to. I knew Lorna too well. She wasn't one to accept blame quietly. She needed an audience. She needed applause for her pain. She would choose every word carefully, erase anything that didn't fit her narrative, and amplify the drama just enough to look like the wounded party. I could already picture it. Some people give up on love instead of fighting for it. I never thought I'd be abandoned like this. Probably posted with a filtered, melancholic selfie, one lonely tear streaming down her cheek. The comments would be overflowing with reassurances like, "You deserve so much more, Queen." It was almost comical the way she curated her image. I didn't care anymore. Let her cry to her followers. Let her make me the villain. I wasn't going to play her game. I knew the truth, and that was enough for me. The rest of my day was filled with quiet distractions, some time at the gym, a casual dinner, even a late movie by myself. The solitude felt unfamiliar yet comforting. After years in a relationship where I was always the one compromising, always the one forgiving, always the one being endlessly patient, I was finally free. For once, I didn't owe anyone anything. But just as I was about to drift off to sleep that night, my phone buzzed. A text message appeared on the screen, coming from a number I didn't recognize. "You should know what she's been telling people." I stared at the message for a while before typing a response. "Who is this?" The reply came almost immediately. "You don't know me, but I know Lorna. And I know she's not being honest." I sat up in bed, heart thudding, a mix of concern and curiosity taking over. "What are you talking about?" I typed back. Another message came through. "Check your email? I just sent something. You really need to see it." I paused, fingers hesitating above my screen. A part of me wanted to brush it off, to keep moving forward, to avoid being dragged back into the web of her drama. But curiosity won. I grabbed my laptop, logged into my email, and saw a new message from an unfamiliar address. The subject line made my stomach knot, "The truth about Lorna." I clicked. What I found shook me. Screenshots. Messages. Photos. Evidence. She hadn't just misrepresented what happened between us, she had rewritten the entire story. Not only was she lying about why I left, but she had been spreading stories that I was unstable, accusing me of being emotionally aggressive, saying I had stormed out in anger over one tiny mistake she made. Her distortions were so convincing that even people I used to call friends were starting to believe her version of events. But the evidence in that email? It revealed a completely different narrative. And one message in particular caught my attention right away. A string of messages between Lorna and the man she had been secretly seeing, the same man I had spotted with her at the bar that night, flashed on my screen. He finally left. One message read, "I didn't even have to try. He walked right out. Just like we planned." The word planned kept echoing in my head. I read the message again and again, the sound of my own pulse loud in my ears. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment mistake. It wasn't some lapse caused by too much to drink. It was deliberate. Lorna had designed this whole thing. She had wanted me to find out, had set the stage perfectly for me to walk away, all so she could play the innocent party. She orchestrated every moment to make herself appear as the one wronged while slipping out without a trace of guilt. And now she was out there, probably putting on a face of sorrow while secretly laughing at my expense. I shut my laptop, my fingers trembling. She believed she had won. But she didn't know what was about to unfold. Time seemed to dissolve as I sat staring at the screen, my thoughts spinning with the weight of this new truth. What I had just discovered felt heavier than anything I had ever endured. Lorna hadn't simply drifted into an affair, she had crafted the perfect conditions for me to leave. Every message, every deceitful comment to friends pointed to a single reality: she had wanted me out of the picture. Not because she was confused or overwhelmed with remorse, but because removing me was easier. She wanted to stand amid the wreckage, surrounded by sympathetic faces, while I was painted as the emotionally unstable ex. She had manipulated every angle, building up to the moment she could step into the role of the blameless victim. But what she didn't foresee was me discovering the truth. I hadn't argued or begged because I thought she wasn't worth it. I walked away because there was nothing left to salvage. Yet now that I held the truth, I knew things weren't finished. Not even close. Taking a deep breath, I closed the laptop once more, trying to steady the storm inside me. I wasn't going to lose control. I wouldn't yell or confront her in a dramatic scene. That's exactly what she'd expect. She wanted validation that I was the unreasonable one. Instead, I would let the facts speak for themselves. The truth, as it always did, would start to ripple outward. My first move was to call my attorney. I had already taken steps to protect myself before I ever walked out, separating finances and securing anything she might try to access. But now I wanted to make sure every remaining door was locked. I detailed everything, down to the last damning message, and by the end of the call, the final stages of ending our marriage were firmly underway. Next, I sent a few of the screenshots to select individuals in our circle. This wasn't an act of revenge, it was a strategic move. I only needed to plant seeds of doubt. Once those were in the ground, people would begin to talk, to question, and eventually her carefully curated image would start to crumble. I didn't need to explain anything. I just needed to let the truth be seen. After that, I blocked her number. I had no interest in listening to whatever spin she would try once she realized her narrative had shifted. Whatever she had planned going forward didn't matter anymore. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt the ground beneath me solid again. I stepped outside, letting the sharp air sting my skin. It grounded me, reminded me that this was real, this was my new beginning. I had moved past mourning the life I thought I had. I had stopped dwelling on what might have been done differently. Some things aren't meant to be fixed, especially when they've been broken from the start. And in that moment, as the sun rose over the unfamiliar streets of my new home, I understood something deeper. Leaving Lorna wasn't just an end. It was the start of something far better. The strange thing about reaching your lowest point is that eventually, you come to see there's nowhere further to fall. And with that realization comes something powerful. You stop staring at the ground. You let go of what's behind you, the betrayal, the pain, the person who hurt you, and you begin to focus on what lies ahead. You start to picture a future again. It had been 3 weeks since I left Lorna and the life we once shared. In that short span, what felt like a collapse had actually turned out to be an opening. For the first time in years, I wasn't stuck living a life shaped by someone else's actions. I wasn't constantly reacting. I had taken back control. The fallout after my departure had been exactly what I predicted. Once her lies began to surface, the entire web Lorna had spun unraveled. I didn't have to say a single word. People put the pieces together themselves. The messages she had sent, laughing about how she had plotted my exit, eventually landed in the inboxes of people she never expected to see them. The sympathy she had once basked in turned into silent judgment. Those friends who once comforted her began slowly pulling away. Word had reached me through shared acquaintances that she was livid. Apparently, she had tried to spin the situation, insisting I had been the manipulative one all along and chalking everything up to a big misunderstanding. But by then, no one was buying her version of the story. As for me, couldn't have been more indifferent. I was far too wrapped up in finding myself again to care. I moved into a new place, not luxurious by any means, but it was my own. Slowly, I began to revisit old interests that I had let go of, reconnecting with friends who genuinely cared and brought value to my life. I even laced up my running shoes again, returning to an activity I had once loved before my world had started revolving around Lorna's demands and endless justifications. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was making decisions solely for myself. And in that freedom, I found real happiness. One quiet evening, I found myself on the modest balcony of my apartment, a cold beer in hand, watching the sunset paint the sky. It was then that a rare and unfamiliar sensation settled over me: peace. Lorna had been a significant part of my life, a lengthy, often painful chapter. But in the end, that's all she was, a chapter, and I had finally moved beyond it. My phone vibrated on the table beside me. A message popped up from an old friend. "Let's catch up over a drink this weekend. It's been far too long." A smile spread across my face. Yes, it was definitely time to start living again.